We are live now, Diana. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Mary Ellen, whenever you're ready. Sorry. So welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Education Policy Committee meeting. Today is Tuesday, February 7th. The time is now 5:09 p.m. I do apologize for the delay. We had some technical difficulties. And with me this evening, I have Janine Randolph and member Mary Ellen Flaherty Ludwig. We also have our policy committee team this evening. And with that being said, I don't have the agenda with me right at the moment, and I know that we're on a time constraint.
Yes.
What's the next item on the agenda? Is it minutes
So,
or?
It's approval of minutes. Yes.
Okay. So did everybody get a chance to read the minutes? I didn't have any changes or updates. Janine or Mary Ellen?
No.
Okay. Thank you so much. And Ralph, I will pass the meeting over to you. Thank you.
Okay. Sounds good. I think the next thing was just public comments too, to note that we have nobody online for public comments.
And we did not have any emails on public comments. Well, there was one actually, and that public comment will be posted with our minutes on our website.
Great, and thank you, Diana. So tonight we're going to actually be reviewing a few different policies. I'd like to change the order.
Excuse me, Ralph.
Yes.
I never asked for a vote of approval on the minutes. No changes. Motion to approve the minutes.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. Seconded by Janine. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, Ralph. Sorry.
Oh, great. No, that's okay. Thank you. So good evening, everybody. And tonight, I'd like to just actually change the order for the sake of not having poor Jill have to wait to the end to do her wellness committee update for us. But we have a few policies that are on the agenda tonight. One is our wellness policy, which Jill and I will share with you in just a moment. And then the others are all just they're actually renewing older policies that we're putting back into place. And I don't believe there's any changes, but Barbara can talk to those. And Barbara, if you'd like, I can read off which is which policy when we get to that for you, since you're still, in transit.
I was able to pull up my email, so thank you, Ralph, but I can do it.
Okay, sounds good. So to start off tonight, our first policy, which is the last one on the agenda, is our wellness policy. And if everybody does not know Jill, I know Jill, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Jill Kress. I assist I'm the food service liaison for the district, which is basically making sure Chartwells, our food service management company, is doing what we've asked them to do. I also am the homeless liaison as well as the wellness chair. So Ralph and I have been working on the wellness policy recently, and we've met with a lot of our principals, a few teachers, and some of our parents, and hopefully students moving forward to discuss the current wellness policy and what's happening with it right now.
Yeah, and if I could just interject a little bit. So as we put forward our model policies, one of the things that we did with any of these policies is they do help with us being in compliance. And so when we started the process, because the wellness policy was put into place only a few years ago, and Jill could kind of give you an idea of like why we needed it in place. And we actually put in a lot of stipulations around things that are required of us to do on a regular basis that are included in our wellness policy. when we implemented the newest wellness policy, the model policy, one of the nice things about it is that it made sure that actually all the state regulations were now completely in compliance. But there was so much time that was spent on the original wellness policy that it actually makes sense to make the old policy a regulation, meaning that those are going to be the steps, the specific steps that we follow. So the umbrella is the wellness policy that you see tonight, and I'll share it out with you real quickly. Which covers basically what our goals are for the district in the area of wellness. And so it actually lists a variety of different things that we do throughout the district. We don't do this in every school, but it gives examples of how we actually make sure that we promote our wellness within all of our programs. We have our goals and guidelines that are listed here and specifically it goes into things that we do for nutrition education and promoting this. We talk about physical activity and different types of activities that exist in the schools. So these are all examples, once again. Our nutritional guidelines for school food and how we actually promote those, which are quite a few. And also marketing of school on campus. We also need to make sure that we actually oversee our wellness policy. So there's oversight that's needed to be done to make sure that we're kind of in compliance with this. And that's where Jill kind of comes into play with this. We actually already established this a few years ago with a core group of stakeholders. It's our wellness committee. So when we knew that we had to bring this policy back up to be reviewed, for the last 2 months, I've joined the wellness committee meetings. They meet monthly with Jill, and it's a core group of stakeholders. We shared with them the policy, and we explained to them also that we would be keeping the existing policy as a regulation, so that, once again, we're still following the exact same rules we've been following for the last few years. And I know Jill can probably talk a little bit about that, because there's some things that we have to do, like there's a triennial assessment that occurs. There's making sure that we actually market and tell the public about certain things. We also have to keep records in a certain way. So those are the things that Jill does with the wellness committee. They're outlined on how we do them specifically here in Norwalk in the regulation that will be posted, which is just the old policy. So if you can imagine, once again, this is the umbrella. Underneath that umbrella is the regulation, which keeps us basically consistent with all the work that we've done up to now. And Jill, I don't know if you wanted to add to that, maybe explain a little bit about what the wellness committee does and some of the things that you guys are responsible for.
So a lot of the responsibilities lie on basically assisting and verifying that schools have all the help they need in being sure that they are in compliance. The triennial review is something that we just completed this June, and it's completed every 3 years. And we basically review our policy and be sure that all those regulations are being followed. And there's basically what we ended up finding at the end of this first triennial assessment was that a lot of the items that we had were policies, but not being practiced. So something that we want to try and do moving forward is with the wellness committee, be sure that all those regulations and policies that are in that wellness committee, wellness policy or regulations are being followed at the schools when they are actually, depending on what policy it is for each school. So that's part of the wellness committee that we want to help make sure these schools are have all the assistance they need in making sure students are seeing or getting the food that they need, or getting the following the guidelines that they need to follow. Meal times are regulated, things like that. So the wellness committee part, in part, is helping schools basically assist the schools with their wellness policies, like their practices. So the triennial was very helpful, and our next one is not until another 3 years. So we're happy about that. And Ralph has been a huge part in assisting us with getting these regulations under this umbrella. And we have met already to discuss with the principals and some of these teachers that what needs to happen moving forward with the policy.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? And Ralph, can you put that back up on the screen for us, please?
Sure.
Yes, I have a question or just a request from Jill. If it seems to me one of the good changes that come about when looking at food and children is the trying to get as much local foods that we can. And if you could speak to, I know, for example, at Fox Run, they actually had a garden at Fox Run, and we're using some of the plants and the lettuce and stuff in their cafeteria. Could you speak to how much is that actually happening in how many schools?
Currently, Mary Ellen, we have Fox Run and Ponus who are utilizing Food Corps, which assists those schools in the nutritional education piece. And like I said, not every school has it yet. We're moving towards, as many schools as possible, but working with Chartwells, we are still purchasing food locally. May not necessarily be growing it in a school garden, but for example, Fox Run, yes, they grew, I remember seeing you at the event, they grew kale in their garden, but we also had throughout the district locally grown kale from Easton, Connecticut, and we pulled that kale for the rest of the district throughout. So Chartwells is also one of the food service director is also on the wellness committee. So we work closely in being sure that they're aware of the policies and practice of the district, and they help us. And we're, that's part of what I do, is to make sure that they're following the district's ask, basically. So we are looking to purchase locally more, and that's something that we're working towards moving forward, hopefully getting more schools with Food Corps. But currently, like I said, Fox Run and Ponus are our two schools, and they have the outdoor classrooms, which they'll be utilizing once the weather warms up a little bit, and they use their Food Corps people.
Thank you.
Sure.
Janine, any questions? Okay, we're good with that then. Thank you, Jill, for everything.
Sure.
I know that this is a very important policy, and it's also educating the kids on how to grow and be healthy and things like that. So thank you for all that you're doing with schools.
Sure. Happy to do it.
Thank you, Jill.
Great. Thanks, Jill. And thanks for joining us tonight too. So
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
and Barbara, I'll turn it over to you for the next couple of policies, which I think the first is jury duty on our list.
Yeah, Ralph, do you think you could share the
can.
link in the agenda just so we all can see it? I mean, I can see it on my
Sure.
phone if I pull it up.
No worries. Definitely. I'll pop it up right now.
Excellent. All right. So good evening, everybody. I'm sorry that I'm calling from my car en route from another meeting. But so the first policy today is jury duty. And again, just to reiterate, these are former policies that we haven't made any changes to, that we are re-implementing. The new policy set the foundation. These are, building upwards. So for jury duty, and this is pretty common and generic, and if an employee is called to jury duty, they're going to let HR know. We kind of have to keep the documentation about when they respond. More often than not, juries tend not to meet every day. Sometimes they might meet like 4 days out of the week. And so they are authorized with pay to fulfill jury duty. And then if they receive any compensation, they're going to assign that compensation to the board, and they must submit, of course, when they complete it, they get like a little notice of completion that also gets submitted to HR. But again, that they do receive, it's not taken from any of their time or pay.
Mhm.
And I'm sure probably a lot of maybe your own offices have had this, or if you've been in school districts, this is not uncommon.
Correct.
So Barbara, just to make sure I understand this clearly, you're saying if the employee gets compensation for the jury duty from when they're at jury duty, then
Yeah,
they
because
hand
sometimes
that over? Is that what you're saying? So it's not a
Yeah.
double dipping kind of situation?
exactly right, because we're paying them, we're not waiting until we get that certification. We're paying them the entire time. There should be there isn't any lapse in payment, or there shouldn't be any lapse in payment. And so we want to make sure that yes, they aren't double dipping. Should the
Okay,
court,
so-
provide any payment.
I understand that. And it's likely if the court were to provide some payment, it would be in a few weeks after. So, I mean, it's
Definitely.
not at that same day, oh, I'm back at school, I have to provide, I heard I'm getting money, so I need to hand that money over. How does that go about? Do they have to come down to HR and hand the check over, or how do they transfer that money to HR?
Fortunately, we haven't had this situation while I've been present. I don't know if everybody's just kind of avoiding jury duty. I'm not really sure what's happening. But yes, ultimately that they would come to HR or but they would notify HR about a receipt of jury duty. Or they would, what can happen is perhaps they notify their administrator, who ultimately notifies HR. And so then there would be a conversation. Ultimately, there would be a conversation between HR and the staff member for the documentation and if any payment was received.
I'm sure the certificate of completion, that letter would say if there was payment. So when they hand it
Should.
in, we would already
Should.
know.
Okay, it seems clear enough then. Thank you.
No problem. Ralph, if we could go to the next.
Sure. And our next policy, I believe, is dual employment.
Perfect. Okay. So this, again, a policy that we've formerly had. And so this is about employees when they have employment in addition to whatever service they're providing to the district. So, and it just outlines some situations where this wouldn't be permissible. So, for instance, number one, you cannot be employed in any capacity in two separate employment positions by more than one department of the Norwalk Board of Education, right? So you can work outside of the district if you have a different job, but you can't have two separate titles within the district. No person who is a regular full-time or part-time employee of the Norwalk Board of Ed shall be permitted to be employed in any full or part-time position by any agency, board, commission, or department of the city of the city of Norwalk. My apologies. So does everybody understand, or does anybody have any questions about that particular restriction?
No.
No person who is a regular full-time or part-time employee of any agency, board, commission, or department of the city of Norwalk shall be able to be employed in any capacity by the Norwalk Board of Education. Right, so vice versa, if that's your full-time job. The limitation set forth above shall not apply to the following: teachers and other professional employees, or any custodian who remains in an assigned building for scheduled events as provided by the collective bargaining agreement. The Board of Ed, in individual cases, may approve a waiver of this policy for an employee who is exempt from the provisions of the Connecticut General Statutes concerning wages, hours, and conditions of employment. And every employment application for non-certified personnel shall make inquiry as to whether the applicant is employed by the city of Norwalk or any of its agencies or the Board of Ed, and notify the applicant of this policy. And so we just want to make sure that there's no conflicts of interest or potential ethical violations. And so that's kind of where this stems from.
Yeah, and we're not making any changes to this as well. This is a
That's-
standard policy that we've already had.
Yeah, seems quite accurate.
Mhm.
So when it says, Barbara, that the limitations set forth above shall not apply to the following. So then teachers or other professional employees could work in an after-school program at a different school than what they're at.
Yes.
Okay. Or coach in another school than they are employed at. Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. So it's no dual employment except in
Those two.
some major situations, because most of the Board of Ed employs teachers. So they're
Yeah.
Okay, I get it.
Thank you.
Our next one has to do with temporary and part-time personnel.
So essentially, this provides if there's a serious need for it, then the Board of Ed recognizes that there are times when there are extraordinary conditions that warrant the superintendent to hire temporary personnel. So i.e. like we are allowed to hire, substitutes or temporary staff to ensure the continuity of the school system's functions and programs, right? And I don't think that's anything that's not new or uncommon. And for retired teachers, we may employ a retired teacher temporarily according to the terms prescribed by law. And so listed below, if you look, there are the specific general statutes that govern when retired teachers can work. So essentially, if the superintendent, in order to maintain the schools, needs to hire temps or subs, et cetera,
Mhm.
we have this kind of policy outlining that.
And we don't have it all in writing because it just references the Connecticut general statutes that
Correct.
someone can reference back to.
Yep.
And again, something we haven't made any changes. We're just putting it back in.
If we were to make any changes to any of these prior existing policies, they would be in red, and we'd kind of discuss what those changes or amendments were.
And
It's
Not
Right.
unlike the wellness policy.
Right, clarifying it for the public, because I know that they're probably wondering why we're, not having any detailed conversations in these, but these are policies that have already been in place. So it's nothing new on our end and no changes are being made.
Correct.
You were going to say something, Mary Ellen?
I was going to say something. While we're not making any changes on our end, and these are uniformly state policies also, the state itself can change a policy in an emergency situation, such as this pandemic. Retired teachers ordinarily can't teach in a Connecticut system for full time, but because of the pandemic, the state relaxed that, and so that supersedes what we have. You agree with that, Barbara?
My understanding is that yes, there were some relaxed rules during COVID, and even for non-certified staff, there were some relaxed rules in terms of how we staff that we needed because COVID was so limiting and disruptive. But yes,
Janine, any question? You good?
Not on this one. Good.
Thank you.
Okay, and our last policy for tonight is nominations for administrative and supervisory personnel. So let me share that one out for you.
and so again, this is the same language. There's been no change, but I think it's important to note, right? So nominations for administrative and supervisory personnel, those get submitted to you, the Board of Education, for consideration. The board can accept or reject nominations. Elections of a principal or supervisor will only be valid if made on the nomination of the superintendent. So that process is, the superintendent would nominate somebody to the board for an administrative position or a supervisory role. And then if rejected, it's the duty again of the superintendent to make another nomination. And that, dovetails with some of our other policies, for instance, SGC recommendation, advisory capacity, but ultimately it's the superintendent who is making, submitting these nominations. Now for certified personnel, employment of all certified personnel other than the superintendent shall be made upon the nomination of the superintendent, except at such times as the superintendent has been authorized by the Board of Ed to issue contracts prior to official action by the Board of Education. And so, and again, right, this is the process. Teachers, right, that's our certified personnel. A nomination is made. And then if for some reason, the board can permit the superintendent to issue contracts prior to official action by the Board of Education. So before they get submitted to the agenda and voted on.
Okay.
Understood.
Comments, questions? Everybody good?
It's good.
Thank you, Barbara, for going over those policies again with us. I know that we are all going to rush over to our next meeting, and Barbara, safe travels home. I know you have a long way home still. but-
I'm going to try to make the meeting, so I might see you at Jefferson.
Boy,
All right,
it went from
Just,
light to dark real quick for you,
I
Barbara.
know.
Right? So
And thank you for taking this meeting in the car. I know that you guys are always
I'm so
working
sorry
very
about
hard.
that.
No, nothing to apologize. You were at another meeting. So, but thank you.
Of course.
So with if no one else has any other questions or concerns, or Ralph, did you want to have anything else you needed to say before we adjourn the meeting?
No, I think, does there have to be a motion though to move these policies for?
Oh, yes, I believe so. Even though there were no changes on the policies, I need a motion to move these policies. Sorry, losing my
move.
voice. Okay, Janine, seconded by Mary Ellen. All in favor, say aye, raise your hand. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. So now, motion to adjourn so we could all get to Jefferson. Mary Ellen, all right.
Second.
And seconded by Janine. Thank you so much. We'll see each other in person in a bit. Thank you,
Sounds
Ralph
good.
and Barbara.
Thanks, everybody.
I say
Good
Barbara.
night.